Born on September 27, 1932, in Brooklyn, New York, Roger C. Carmel began his acting career in the 1950s in several Broadway productions. After that, he made several guest roles on television in shows such as The Dick Van Dyke Show, Hogan's Heroes, The Munsters, and more. He scored a lead role in 1967, starring in the NBC comedy The Mothers-in-Law, where he played the henpecked husband, Roger Buell. That same year, Carmel landed the role of the evil villain, Colonel Gum, in ABC's Batman show. And he was the voice of Smokey Bear. But perhaps Carmel's most famous role was as Harry Mudd in the original Star Trek series. He played the character in 2 episodes, Mudd's Women and I, Mudd.
I don't believe it.
Welcome aboard, Kirk.
Carmel was slated to reprise his role as Harry Mudd in a first-season episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but he died in 1986 before filming began. Drugs were suspected as the cause of his death. He was interred in New Mount Carmel Cemetery in Glendale, Queens, New York. At the age of 25, Susan Oliver began her acting career in 1957. The beautiful blue-eyed blonde appeared in many classic television shows such as Wagon Train, Father Knows Best, Bonanza, Twilight Zone.
We'll prepare a place for you to rest.
I'm appreciative, I really am.
The Fugitive, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and many more. She became particularly famous for her role as Vina, the green-skinned alien in the original Star Trek series. The Menagerie was originally filmed in 1964 for the pilot of the new sci-fi series. But by the time the show aired in 1966, cast changes, especially the starship's captain, made The Menagerie unusable as it was. So they re-edited it with new footage, using The Menagerie as a flashback, and created the 2-part episode named The Cage. Oliver was also a pioneer in the field of aviation. In 1970, she was named Pilot of the Year by the Association of Executive Pilots. In 1970, she was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Oliver continued to work despite her illness. Oliver passed away in 1990 at the age of 58, but her legacy as an actress and trailblazer in the aviation industry continues to inspire many to this day. The genius behind the futuristic world of Star Trek was Gene Roddenberry. Before becoming a screenwriter, he flew B-17 bombers during World War II. Around 1953, Roddenberry became a freelance television writer. He authored scripts for several television shows, including Dragnet, Bat Masterson, and Have Gun Will Travel, with which he won the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Teleplay in 1958. He also created and produced the television series The Lieutenant in 1963. But Roddenberry had a vision for a new television series, one that presented an optimistic view of life in the future as it traced the crew's mission, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Roddenberry's idea for Star Trek was accepted by Desilu Productions, but he still needed a network to air the show. CBS turned him down. NBC agreed to a pilot episode. Completed in 1965, the pilot was named The Menagerie, but the episode was deemed too cerebral by the network, and it was rejected. A second pilot was ordered by NBC. An episode named Where No Man Has Gone Before was created for the second pilot. NBC approved it, and the rest, as they say, is history. Finally green-lighted, the show premiered in 1966.
to boldly go where no man has gone before.
The original Star Trek series was groundbreaking in its portrayal of a diverse and inclusive future. Roddenberry went on to produce 6 Star Trek feature films. On television, he created Star Trek the Animated Series and Star Trek The Next Generation. On September 4th, 1986, Gene Roddenberry's fans presented him with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, the first writer-producer to be so honored. Following a stroke, Roddenberry's health declined. On October 24th, 1991, while on his way to a doctor's appointment, Gene Roddenberry collapsed and suffered cardiopulmonary arrest. He died in his doctor's office at the age of 70. Roddenberry's vision of a world where people of all races, genders, and nationalities could work together to explore the unknown inspired generations of fans and helped to shape the future of science fiction. Mark Leonard got his start on stage while in the Army. In the mid-1960s, he moved to Los Angeles, where he played a recurring role of Dr. Ernest Gregory in Another World. In 1965, he played Balthazar, one of the 3 wise men in the biblical epic, The Greatest Story Ever Told. He made several television appearances, including Mission Impossible, Gunsmoke, and Here Come the Brides. He portrayed Urko in the 1974 television series Planet of the Apes. But Leonard is best known for his appearances in the Star Trek franchise, particularly in the role of the Vulcan ambassador Sarek, the father of Spock. But in his very first Star Trek appearance, he played the first Romulan ever seen in the series in an episode entitled Balance of Terror. The following year, he originated the role of Sarek in Journey to Babel. Leonard would also voice his Sarek character in Star Trek the Animated Series. In 1979, he played a Klingon in Star Trek the Motion Picture, making him the first actor to play 3 different aliens, a Romulan, a Vulcan, and a Klingon. He played Sarek again in the 1990s in the episodes Sarek and Unification Part 1 of the sequel series Star Trek The Next Generation. Mark Leonard died in 1996, a victim of multiple myeloma, a cancer of the plasma cells. He was 68 years old. One of the most beloved characters among Star Trek fans was that of the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Leonard McCoy, played by DeForest Kelley. Born on January 20th, 1920, Kelley began his career in theater before transitioning to film and television. He made his film debut in 1940 in the musical New Moon. He made many appearances in the early days of television, especially in westerns. The Lone Ranger, Gunsmoke, Rawhide, Bonanza, and more. His big break came in 1966 when he was cast to play Dr. McCoy on the premiere episode of Star Trek called The Man Trap. Few catchphrases became as iconic as some of the lines that Dr. McCoy delivered.
I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer.
You're a healer. There's a patient. That's an order.
She's dead, Jim.
The phrases became pop culture and would be uttered by Star Trek fans long after the series ended. He went on to reprise his role in several Star Trek movies, Star Trek The Next Generation, as well as Star Trek, the Animated Series. Kelley was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 1997 and died on June 11, 1999, at the age of 79. His remains were cremated and the ashes were spread over the Pacific Ocean. James Doohan was the youngest of 4 children. Born in Vancouver, British Columbia, he studied acting at the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York City. Doohan estimated that he performed in over 4,000 radio programs. On television, he was seen in The Twilight Zone, Bonanza, The Outer Limits, The Fugitive, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and more. When he auditioned for Star Trek, he tested several different accents. It was decided that his Scottish accent would best fit the character of the Enterprise's chief engineer, Montgomery Scott. His semi-regular role in Star Trek became a regular supporting character on the show, and the rest is history. He also voiced several inanimate objects throughout the series, including the voice of M5 in the episode entitled The Ultimate Computer.
M5, tie in.
M5,
You will be under attack in a moment.
sensors have recorded approach of ships.
After the series ended, James Doohan reprised his role of Scotty in the animated series, as well as 7 Star Trek films. In 1992, he returned to the Enterprise in Star Trek: The Next Generation, in an episode called Relics.
Insufficient data. Please specify parameters.
The Enterprise. Show me the bridge of the Enterprise, you chattering piece of...
James Doohan passed away on July 20th, 2005 at the age of 85. The cause of death was due to complications of pulmonary fibrosis. His body was cremated. On May 22, 2012, a small urn containing some of Doohan's remains was flown into space aboard the Falcon 9 spacecraft. Scotty had made his final trek to the stars. At the age of 27, Jane Wyatt landed the role of Sandra in the Frank Capra 1937 drama Lost Horizon. That film launched her career. In 1954, she starred as Margaret Anderson with Robert Young in television's Father Knows Best. She won 3 consecutive Emmy Awards for her performance in that show. In the Star Trek universe, Wyatt played Amanda Grayson, the first wife of the Vulcan, Sarek. They were the parents of the Enterprise's science officer, Mr. Spock. Wyatt made her first appearance in the episode Journey to Babel.
Logic. Logic. I'm sick to death of logic. Do you want to know how I feel about your logic?
Emotional, isn't she?
She has always been that way.
Indeed. Why did you marry her?
At the time, it seemed the logical thing to do.
She made several TV appearances in the 70s and 80s, including a 1982 episode of Happy Days entitled Empty Nest. Also appearing in that episode was Harriet Nelson and, of course, the Happy Days mom, Marion Ross. She would later reprise her role as Amanda in the 1986 film Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. 3 years later, she would perform for the last time in the made-for-television movie Amityville 4: The Evil Escapes. On October 20th, 2006, after living a long life and successful career, Jane Wyatt died peacefully in her sleep of natural causes at the age of 96. She was buried in San Fernando Mission Cemetery in California and will be missed by Star Trek fans everywhere. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, Majel Barrett would grow up to become one of the most versatile characters in Star Trek lore. In 1960, Barrett could be seen on television in Leave It to Beaver as Lumpy Rutherford's mother, Gwen. She also appeared in several episodes of the long-running TV Western, Bonanza.
My, this is a pretty house. Ah, Sugar Plum. Is this the honeymoon nest you wrote me about?
Her film credits included Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter?, A Guide for the Married Man, and Westworld, to name a few. She landed the role of number 1 in the pilot for the original Star Trek in 1964. She appeared in various roles in the original series, including Nurse Christine Chapel, and later went on to play Lwaxana Troi in Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Just 2 months after the final episode of Star Trek aired, Majel Barrett married Star Trek's creator Gene Roddenberry in August of 1969. In addition to her acting work, Barrett also served as the voice of the Enterprise computer in nearly every Star Trek series and film, earning her the nickname the First Lady of Star Trek. Majel Barrett died of leukemia on December 18, 2008, at the age of 76. Her contributions to the Star Trek franchise and the entertainment industry as a whole have left a lasting impact, and her legacy continues to inspire generations of fans and creators alike. Arguably the most ruthless desperado the Starship Enterprise had ever faced was the devious villain Khan, played by Mexican-born Ricardo Montalban. In his early career, he made several films in Mexico and became a popular star in that country. MGM took notice and signed him for the 1947 flick Fiesta. The studio was so impressed by his performance, they signed him to a long-term contract. He became the spokesperson for the Chrysler Cordoba automobile, touting its luxurious interior.
In the Chrysler tradition of luxury, yes, even rich Corinthian leather.
In reality, it was the same leather used in all of Chrysler's cars. The leather was produced by a company in Newark, New Jersey. He landed the role of the evil Khan Noonien Singh in the 1967 Star Trek episode Space Seed. He reprised his role in the 1982 film Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Captain Kirk was not happy. He made other television appearances in shows such as Gunsmoke, Ironside, It Takes a Thief, and more. But perhaps his best-known role was that of Mr. Rourke in the television series Fantasy Island, which ran from 1978 to 1984. His career spanned 7 decades. A career that included film, stage, television, and commercials. Montalban was known for his elegance and suave demeanor, both on and off screen. Ricardo Montalban passed away of congestive heart failure on January 14, 2009, at the age of 88. His contributions to the entertainment industry and his commitment to social justice serve as an example of the power of art and activism to effect positive change in the world. Leonard Nimoy was a multi-talented actor, director, and author, but his iconic portrayal of the half-human, half-Vulcan character, Mr. Spock, will forever be remembered fondly by Star Trek fans everywhere. Born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1931, Leonard Nimoy had acting in his blood as early as age 8. In his early 20s, he scored several parts in film, including Them, 1954, and Zombies of the Stratosphere, 1952. He also made numerous appearances on TV in such shows as Highway Patrol, Dragnet, Sea Hunt, Bonanza, and The Twilight Zone.
Short yards 5-0. That's right, still.
But it was his portrayal of Mr. Spock in Star Trek that was widely acclaimed and became a pop culture phenomenon. The character's trademark hand gesture and catchphrase, "Live long and prosper," became iconic.
Live long and prosper.
After Star Trek, he landed the role of the undercover operative, Paris, in the television series Mission Impossible.
No, Colonel. No. The answer is not to get rid of him, but to get around him.
He later hosted the documentary television series In Search Of. Nimoy was also an accomplished director, having helmed several episodes of Star Trek and other TV series, as well as feature films like 3 Men and a Baby, The Good Mother, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. He also voiced his Spock character for Star Trek the Animated Series. He reprised his role of Mr. Spock in 1991 in the 2-part episode Unification in Star Trek The Next Generation. On television, Nimoy's voice was heard on The Big Bang Theory, The Simpsons, Futurama, and more. Leonard Nimoy died at the age of 83 on February 27, 2015. The cause of death was end-stage COPD. Nimoy's legacy continues to live on, both through his work and through the many actors, directors, and writers who have been inspired by him. He was a trailblazer in the entertainment industry, and his portrayal of Mr. Spock helped to pave the way for more diverse and nuanced depictions of characters in science fiction and beyond.
Live long and prosper.
The role of Yeoman Janice Rand was played by Grace Lee Whitney. In her late teens, Whitney opened in nightclubs for Billie Holiday and Buddy Rich. She also toured with the Spike Jones Band. On Broadway, she performed with Phil Silvers and Kay Ballard in the show Top Banana. She was seen frequently on television, in shows such as Batman, Bewitched, The Rifleman, and The Real McCoys, to name a few. On the big screen, Whitney performed in the 1959 comedy Some Like It Hot. In 1953, she could be seen in the 3D thriller House of Wax as one of the can-can dancers. Her biggest break was when she landed the role of Yeoman Janice Rand, the personal assistant to Captain Kirk. The character appeared in the first season of the show. She reprised her role in the film Star Trek the Motion Picture and in 6 other Star Trek franchise productions. Her autobiography, The Longest Trek, was published in 1998. It detailed her memories of Star Trek as well as her struggles with drugs and alcohol abuse. She spent decades helping people with addiction problems. Grace Lee Whitney died on May 1, 2015, of natural causes at the age of 85. She will always be remembered as a talented actress and singer who played an iconic role in the Star Trek franchise. Her honesty and bravery in sharing her struggles with addiction have also inspired many, making her a role model for those seeking recovery. Born in Illinois, Nichelle Nichols began her career as a dancer, performing with Duke Ellington and Lionel Hampton before transitioning to acting. In film, she was a dancer in the 1959 production of Porgy and Bess. On stage, she performed in the Oscar Brown musical, Kicks and Company. In 1964, she had a role in an episode of The Lieutenant, where she met writer and producer Gene Roddenberry. This would lead to her landing the role of communications officer, Lieutenant Nyota Uhura, for the new NBC series, Star Trek. Nichols broke barriers with her portrayal of Uhura, becoming one of the first African-American women to be featured in a leading role on a mainstream television show. After her first season on Star Trek, Nichelle was offered an acting role on Broadway. She decided she would leave the show to return to the stage. She gave Gene Roddenberry her notice. He asked her to take the weekend off to reconsider her decision. Coincidentally, that weekend she attended an NAACP banquet where she met Dr. Martin Luther King. Being a big Star Trek fan, King convinced her to stay with the show, telling her that she was fulfilling a vital role model for Black children and young women everywhere. Luckily, she took his advice and remained with the Star Trek franchise. In the 1968 episode called Plato's Stepchildren, Lieutenant Uhura kissed Captain Kirk in what would be known as the first interracial kiss on U.S. television. It was groundbreaking. After the series was canceled, Nichols would reprise her role in 6 of the Star Trek feature films, as well as the animated series. Nichols would also provide her voice on episodes of The Simpsons and Futurama.
Incoming transmission from MCI One Rate Department. It sounds like a limited-time offer.
In addition to her acting career, Nichols has been a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion in the entertainment industry. She worked closely with NASA in the 1970s, recruiting women and minorities for the space program. Nichols has received numerous honors for her work, including a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. After a long battle with dementia, Nichols died of heart failure on July 30th, 2022, at the age of 89. Her legacy as a trailblazer for African American representation in the entertainment industry continues to inspire and influence generations of actors and fans alike.